Los Angeles, 2008. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine football field of Westbrook High School, where 17-year-old Ashley Martinez practiced her cheerleading routines. Her blonde ponytail swung in perfect rhythm as she executed a flawless series of jumps, unaware that her life was about to change forever. "You're getting better every day, Ashley," called out Coach Daniel Roberts from the sidelines. At 32, he was the youngest and most popular coach in the school's history. His success in turning around the football program had made him something of a local celebrity in their part of Los Angeles. Ashley beamed at the praise. Like many of the cheerleaders, she had developed a crush on the handsome coach with his movie star smile and charismatic personality. Unlike the others, though, she had caught his eye in return. "Thanks, Coach Roberts," she called back. Trying to hide her blush, she gathered her things, knowing she needed to hurry if she wanted to make it to first period on time. "Hey, Ashley," Coach Roberts said, jogging over to her. "Would you mind staying after practice today? I'd like to discuss making you squad captain for next year." Ashley's heart leaped. Squad captain was everything she'd worked for. That afternoon marked the beginning of what would become the most tragic story in Westbrook High's history. A tale of trust betrayed, lives destroyed, and revenge served with cold, calculated precision. Maria Martinez, Ashley's mother, noticed the changes in her daughter first. The usually bubbly teenager became withdrawn. Her grades started slipping. She lost interest in cheerleading, something that had once been her passion. "Mihija, what's wrong?" Maria would ask, but Ashley would just shake her head and retreat to her room. What Maria didn't know was that her daughter was harboring a secret that would eventually tear their community apart. The private coaching sessions with Daniel Roberts had evolved into something else entirely. The charming coach had carefully groomed his young student, using her dreams of becoming squad captain to manipulate her into a sexual relationship. Ashley wasn't his first victim, but she would be his last. By spring of 2009, Ashley's health began to deteriorate. What started as fatigue and frequent colds developed into something more serious. Dr. Sarah Chen at Los Angeles General Hospital delivered the devastating news: Ashley was HIV positive. "This can't be right," Ashley had whispered, her world crumbling around her. "I've only ever been with." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Coach Roberts, he was the only one. When confronted, Roberts denied everything. He had carefully covered his tracks, deleting messages, making sure their encounters were always private. It was her word against his, and he was the respected coach who had brought glory back to Westbrook High's football program. The school administration, faced with Ashley's accusations, placed Roberts on paid leave pending an investigation. But without concrete evidence, they couldn't take further action. The community largely sided with the popular coach, dismissing Ashley's claims as attention-seeking behavior from a troubled teenager. But Ashley wasn't the only one. As news of her condition spread, other girls came forward. Some had graduated, some had transferred schools, but they all told similar stories about Coach Roberts. The pattern was clear, but proving it in court would be another matter entirely. That's when Thomas Martinez, Ashley's father, took matters into his own hands. Thomas had always been the quiet type, a construction worker who believed in hard work and family values. Watching his little girl waste away, ostracized by her peers and betrayed by a system that was supposed to protect her, something inside him snapped. He began following Roberts, learning his routines, watching his every move. The coach had moved to a small apartment across town after the scandal broke, but he was still living his life, seemingly unaffected by the destruction he had caused. "Poppy, please," Ashley had begged when she realized what her father was planning. "Don't do anything. I don't want to lose you too." But Thomas couldn't let it go. The sight of his daughter's once healthy body growing weaker each day, the whispers at church, the pitying looks from neighbors, it was all too much. On June 15, 2009, Coach Daniel Roberts left his evening workout at LA Fitness, just like he did every Monday. He never made it home. That warm June evening, Coach Daniel Roberts finished his usual workout at 9:45 p.m. Security cameras captured him walking to his black BMW in the parking lot, gym bag slung over his shoulder. He was wearing his typical post-workout attire, gray Westbrook High football sweatpants, and a fitted black t-shirt. What the cameras didn't catch was Thomas Martinez waiting in his work van 3 spaces down, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had turned white. For 2 weeks, he had studied Robert's schedule, knowing that Monday nights were when the gym was quietest and the parking lot most empty. Roberts had just unlocked his car door when he heard footsteps behind him. Before he could turn around, something hard struck the back of his head. He crumpled to the ground, his gym bag spilling its contents across the asphalt. Thomas worked quickly, dragging Robert's unconscious body into his van. Years of construction work had made him strong, and adrenaline did the rest. Within minutes, they were driving toward an abandoned warehouse in East Los Angeles, where Thomas had been working on a renovation project. When Roberts regained consciousness, he found himself tied to a chair in a dim, dusty room that smelled of concrete and rust. Blood trickled down the side of his face from the head wound. What do you want?" Roberts stammered, his eyes struggling to adjust to the low light. Thomas stepped out of the shadows. "You know exactly who I am." Recognition flickered across Robert's face. "Mr. Martinez, listen, I can explain." "Explain?" Thomas's voice was eerily calm. "Explain how you destroyed my daughter's life? How you gave her a death sentence while you walk around free?" "It's not what you think," Roberts began, but Thomas cut him off by slamming his fist into the coach's jaw. "I've watched my daughter suffer for months," Thomas said. "I've held her hair back while she vomits from the medications. I've seen her cry herself to sleep. And you just kept coaching, kept living your life like nothing happened." What happened next would later be described in horrifying detail in Detective Sarah Cooper's report. Thomas Martinez had brought his tools from work, the same ones he used every day to build houses. But that night, they served a different purpose. For 4 hours, Thomas methodically tortured Daniel Roberts. He started with the coach's hands, the ones that had touched his daughter, then moved to his legs, the ones that had carried him to her. Each cut, each break was calculated, designed to inflict maximum pain while keeping the victim conscious. Throughout it all, Thomas kept talking, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. He told Roberts about Ashley's first cheerleading competition, about teaching her to ride a bike, about her dreams of going to UCLA. All the future moments that would now be shortened or denied because of what Roberts had done. At 3:17 a.m., Daniel Roberts finally succumbed to his injuries. Thomas sat in a metal folding chair across from his victim's body, covered in blood and sweat, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness where his rage had been. He called 911 from a burner phone he'd purchased weeks earlier. "I want to report a murder," he said calmly. "The abandoned Peterson warehouse on East Olympic Boulevard. You'll find Coach Daniel Roberts there. Tell the families of the other girls they don't have to worry about him anymore." Then Thomas drove home, took a shower, and waited for the police to arrive. Maria Martinez was making coffee when she heard the pounding on their front door at 6 a.m. Through the kitchen window, she could see 3 police cars parked outside, their lights casting red and blue shadows across their small front yard. Upstairs, Ashley woke to the sound of her mother's scream. The news spread through Los Angeles like wildfire. Popular high school coach found tortured and murdered. The headlines screamed, "Local father confesses to revenge killing." But it wasn't until the investigation began that the full scope of Daniel Roberts' crimes came to light. Detective Sarah Cooper stood in the warehouse, her flashlight beam cutting through the dusty air. After 15 years with LAPD's Homicide Division, she thought she'd seen everything. She was wrong. "Jesus," her partner, Detective Mike Ramirez, muttered beside her. This wasn't just murder. This was personal. The crime scene told a story of calculated rage. Robert's body remained tied to the chair, but what had been done to him made even veteran officers step outside for air. Blood spatter analysis would later show that Thomas Martinez had been methodical, taking his time, making each moment count. "Check this out," Ramirez called, pointing his flashlight at the wall behind the chair. Written in Robert's blood were the names of 7 girls, including Ashley Martinez. Below them was a simple message: remember them. The investigation that followed would shake Los Angeles to its core. Detective Cooper's first interview was with Julie Chen, a former Westbrook cheerleader who had graduated 2 years earlier. She sat in the police station's interview room, twisting a tissue in her hands. "I never told anyone," Julie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said no one would believe me, that I'd lose my scholarship to Stanford if I spoke up." One by one, the girls whose names were written on the warehouse wall came forward. Each story followed the same pattern: private coaching sessions, subtle grooming, threats to keep them quiet. Roberts had been calculating, choosing girls from broken homes or those desperate for college scholarships. Bethany Williams, class of 2007, broke down during her interview. "He told me I was special, different from the others. When I started getting sick, he disappeared. I tested positive for HIV last year." The evidence mounted. Roberts' laptop, seized from his apartment, contained hundreds of inappropriate photos and messages. His phone records showed late-night calls to multiple underage girls over the years. Bank statements revealed payments to former students, hush money to keep his secrets buried. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from Roberts' own medical records. He had been diagnosed with HIV in 2005, but continued his predatory behavior without disclosure, effectively giving multiple young girls a life-altering illness. Back at the Martinez home, Ashley watched the news unfold from her hospital bed. The medications had taken a toll on her body, leaving her too weak to attend school. Maria hadn't left her daughter's side since Thomas's arrest. "I should have seen it," Maria kept saying, smoothing Ashley's hair. "A mother should know when her child is hurting." The media descended on Los Angeles like vultures. News vans camped outside Westbrook High. Reporters ambushed former cheerleaders and their families. Everyone wanted to know, how had Roberts gotten away with it for so long? The answer came from unexpected sources. Anonymous letters began arriving at the police station. Teachers who had suspected something, but feared losing their jobs. A former assistant coach who had walked in on Roberts with a student but was convinced to keep quiet. A school administrator who had dismissed earlier complaints as teenage drama. The wall of silence that had protected Roberts for years began to crumble. Principal David Chen resigned in disgrace when it emerged that he had buried 2 formal complaints against Roberts. The school board launched an internal investigation. The entire athletic department underwent scrutiny. But for the victims and their families, these actions came too late. In the county jail, Thomas Martinez received hundreds of letters of support. Parents called him a hero. Victims thanked him for doing what the system had failed to do. Some even contributed to his legal defense fund. His attorney, Rebecca Torres, built her defense strategy around temporary insanity and extreme emotional distress. Any parent watching their child suffer would understand Thomas's actions, she told reporters. This is a father who watched the system fail his daughter at every turn. The question on everyone's mind was, would a jury see Thomas Martinez as a cold-blooded killer or a desperate father protecting his child? The Los Angeles County Courthouse was packed on the first day of Thomas Martinez's trial. News cameras lined the entrance, capturing the arrival of key players in what the media had dubbed the Spirit Squad slaying. Ashley Martinez, now visibly thin and using a wheelchair, arrived with her mother. Her appearance drew gasps from the crowd. The vibrant cheerleader was gone, replaced by a pale shadow of her former self. She wore a purple ribbon, the color for HIV awareness, pinned to her cardigan. District Attorney Michael Bradford faced a unique challenge. While the evidence of Thomas's guilt was overwhelming, public sentiment strongly favored the defendant. Several potential jurors had been dismissed during selection for openly stating they would never convict Martinez. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bradford began his opening statement, "this case is about more than revenge. It's about whether we, as a society, can allow individuals to take the law into their own hands, no matter how justified their anger might be." Defense attorney Rebecca Torres took a different approach. She painted a vivid picture of a father watching his daughter's life crumble, of sleepless nights spent listening to her cry, of holding her hair back during chemotherapy-like HIV treatments. Thomas Martinez didn't just snap one day, Torres argued. He was broken, piece by piece, watching a system designed to protect children fail his daughter completely. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Each day brought new revelations about Roberts' predatory behavior and the institutional failures that enabled it. Dr. James Wilson, Ashley's infectious disease specialist, testified about the strain of HIV Roberts had transmitted, one resistant to several first-line medications. These young women will face lifelong health challenges, he explained. Their life expectancy is significantly reduced. Former Westbrook High Administrator Patricia Reynolds broke down on the stand when describing how she'd been pressured to bury complaints about Roberts. The football program brought in too much money, she admitted through tears. We were told to protect the school's reputation at all costs. But the most powerful testimony came from Ashley herself. Despite her weakened condition, she insisted on taking the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she described how Roberts had manipulated her, using her dreams of becoming squad captain to isolate and abuse her. When I tested positive, she said, her voice trembling, he told me it must have been someone else. He said if I told anyone about us, he'd make sure no college would accept me. I believed him. During cross-examination, Bradford asked Ashley about her father's actions. Did you know what your father was planning? Ashley wiped away tears. No. But I understand why he did it. Every day I was getting sicker, and Coach Roberts was still out there, probably hurting other girls. The police couldn't help. The school wouldn't help. My dad, he just wanted to protect me. The prosecution's case was factual and methodical. They presented security camera footage, DNA evidence, and Thomas's own confession. The defense didn't dispute these facts. Instead, they focused on Thomas's state of mind, bringing in psychiatric experts to testify about the psychological impact of watching one's child suffer. Dr. Sarah Foster, a prominent psychiatrist, explained the concept of temporary insanity induced by extreme emotional distress. Mr. Martinez experienced what we call a dissociative episode, she testified. The prolonged trauma of watching his daughter's deterioration, combined with the knowledge that her abuser faced no consequences, created a perfect storm of psychological pressure. In his closing argument, Bradford reminded the jury of the brutality of Roberts' murder. Regardless of Roberts' crimes, we cannot condone vigilante justice. The rule of law must prevail. Torres's closing argument was simple but effective. She projected a photo of Ashley as a healthy cheerleader beside a current photo. This is what Daniel Roberts did to Ashley Martinez. This is what he did to at least 6 other girls. When every system meant to protect these children failed, Thomas Martinez did what any parent would want to do. He made sure Roberts could never hurt another child. The jury deliberated for 4 days. On a rainy Thursday morning, the jury filed back into the courtroom. Ashley gripped her mother's hand as the 4 women stood. The tension in the room was palpable. In the case of the state of California versus Thomas Martinez, on the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant not guilty. Gasps filled the courtroom. Bradford's face tightened. On the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter, we find the defendant guilty. Maria Martinez collapsed into tears. Ashley closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. Thomas stood stoically, his expression unchanged. Judge Sandra Williams listened as the jury explained their decision. They had concluded that while Thomas's actions were premeditated, his mental state at the time of the murder met the legal standard for extreme emotional distress, negating the malice aforethought required for a first-degree murder conviction. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, Judge Williams faced a difficult decision. The courtroom was again packed, this time with supporters holding signs reading "Free Thomas Martinez" and "Parents Protect When Systems Fail." Before announcing the sentence, Judge Williams allowed victim impact statements. But in an unprecedented twist, those speaking weren't there to condemn Thomas. They were Roberts' victims and their families, all asking for leniency. Bethany Williams, now visibly pregnant, addressed the court. "Because of Coach Roberts, my baby will be born to a mother with HIV. Mr. Martinez did what our justice system couldn't. He made sure this wouldn't happen to anyone else." Julie Chen spoke about her ongoing nightmares. "Every time I get sick, I wonder if this is it, if the virus is finally winning." Mr. Martinez ended that fear for future potential victims. Ashley's statement moved many in the courtroom to tears. "My father taught me that actions have consequences," she said, her voice steady despite her weakened state. Coach Roberts never faced consequences for his actions until my father made him face them. Judge Williams took nearly an hour to deliver her decision. She acknowledged the complexity of the case and its broader implications for society. "Mr. Martinez, your actions were brutal and outside the law," she began. "However, this court cannot ignore the extraordinary circumstances that led to this tragedy. The systematic failures that allowed Daniel Roberts to prey on young girls, the institutional corruption that protected him, and the devastating impact on your daughter and other victims must be considered." She sentenced Thomas Martinez to 7 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 3 years. It was significantly less than the maximum sentence for voluntary manslaughter. The case's impact rippled far beyond the courtroom. The California Department of Education launched a comprehensive review of coaching oversight in high schools. New protocols were established for handling accusations of misconduct. Mandatory HIV disclosure laws were strengthened. Westbrook High underwent a complete administrative overhaul. The new principal, Dr. Angela Rodriguez, implemented strict policies regarding one-on-one interactions between staff and students. The school also established a victim support fund using money previously earmarked for the football program. 6 months after the verdict, Ashley Martinez testified before the state legislature, supporting a bill that would require regular HIV testing for school employees in positions of authority over students. The bill, dubbed Ashley's Law, passed unanimously. Maria Martinez used her daughter's story to start a support group for families affected by HIV/AIDS. The group, called Spirit Survivors, quickly grew from a local organization to a national network. 3 years after Thomas Martinez's sentencing, Ashley sat in her doctor's office receiving news that would change her life again, but this time for the better. "The new treatment protocol is working," Dr. Wilson explained, showing her the latest test results. "Your viral load is undetectable. While this isn't a cure, it means you can live a relatively normal life with proper medication." Ashley, now 20, had become the face of young HIV survivors in Los Angeles. Despite her initial health struggles, she had earned her GED and was taking online classes at Los Angeles City College studying social work. Her goal was to help other survivors of sexual abuse. On a warm September morning in 2012, Thomas Martinez walked out of California State Prison, Los Angeles County. He had served 3 years and was released on good behavior. Ashley and Maria were waiting for him, along with dozens of supporters holding welcome home signs. The reunion was emotional. Thomas, thinner but standing tall, embraced his daughter, who was now healthy enough to walk on her own. "I'm sorry I left you," he whispered. "You never left me, Poppy," Ashley replied. "You protected me." The Martinez family's story had sparked significant changes in the Los Angeles educational system. The Silent No More protocol, implemented in all LA County schools, created anonymous reporting systems for students and mandatory investigation procedures for all complaints against staff members. But the ripples spread far beyond Los Angeles. Similar policies were adopted by school districts across the country. The case was studied in law schools as an example of jury nullification and the complex intersection of justice and revenge. Julie Chen, one of Robert's earlier victims, became a lawyer specializing in victims' rights. Her firm offered pro bono services to sexual assault survivors. "What happened to us was preventable," she often said in interviews. "The system failed us, but we're rebuilding it better." Bethany Williams gave birth to a healthy daughter who tested negative for HIV thanks to proper medical intervention during pregnancy. She named her Hope and became an advocate for HIV-positive mothers. The warehouse where Roberts died was demolished in 2013. In its place, the community built the Phoenix Center, a support facility for young survivors of sexual abuse. Ashley Martinez cut the ribbon at its opening ceremony. Maria Martinez's support group, Spirit Survivors, opened chapters in 15 states. They provided counseling, medical referrals, and legal assistance to families affected by HIV/AIDS. The organization became known for its purple phoenix logo, symbolizing rising from the ashes of trauma. Thomas found work as a construction safety instructor after his release, using his experience to teach others. While he never spoke publicly about what happened in the warehouse, he became an advocate for better protection of minors in educational settings. In 2014, 5 years after Robert's death, Ashley stood before a graduating class of social workers at UCLA as their commencement speaker. Her speech would later go viral. My story began with trust betrayed and innocence stolen. It continued through darkness, disease, and despair. But it didn't end there. It transformed into something powerful. A catalyst for change, a reason to fight, a call for justice. Each of you will meet someone like me in your career, someone whose world has been shattered. Remember this, healing isn't just about surviving. It's about rebuilding, stronger than before. The former Westbrook High cheerleading squad room was converted into a student counseling center. On its wall hangs a plaque with the names of all known survivors of Daniel Roberts, followed by the words, "Their voices were finally heard." By 2015, Ashley's Law had been adopted by 37 states. The legislation not only required HIV testing, but also established strict guidelines for reporting suspicious behavior and protecting student whistleblowers. The Martinez family never moved from their modest Los Angeles home. Their front yard, once crowded with news vans, now bloomed with purple flowers, planted by neighbors and supporters over the years. Each spring, they served as a reminder, even in the darkest soil, new life can grow. On the 10th anniversary of Robert's death in 2019, Ashley published a memoir titled Spirit Unbroken. The book became a bestseller, with proceeds going to support young HIV/AIDS patients. In its dedication, she wrote, "To my father, who taught me that love sometimes makes hard choices. To my mother, who showed me that strength can be quiet. To all survivors who prove every day that our stories don't end with our trauma. And to those still silent, your voice matters. Your truth matters. You matter." The story of the Spirit Squad slaying, as tragic as it was, became more than just another true crime tale. It became a watershed moment in how American society handles abuse in educational institutions, a testament to the power of speaking out, and a complex moral parable about justice, revenge, and the lengths a parent will go to protect their child. Today, a purple ribbon hangs in the Martinez family living room, framed alongside Ashley's college diploma and social worker's license. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds can lead to the most profound healing, and that justice, while imperfect, finds its way in the end.